Hello and welcome to Pabbly Connect. So in this video, we will be discussing how to integrate app using parameter based authentication inside Pabbly Connect. And to do so, we just require two basic things. First one is the API doc of the application which you want to integrate. And the second thing is a Pabbly Connect account. So let's begin. Now, as you can see, here we have reached to the front-end dashboard of Pabbly Connect. And to access the backend developers platform, you just have to go to the URL section, and here after connect.pabbly.com, you have to enter /app. And now you can see that you have reached to the app integration page. Now to begin with, just click on this create new app button, give your application a name and click on save. So in this video, just for a reference, we are referring that how we have integrated MoveSend inside Pabbly Connect. So MoveSend is an email marketing application and it uses parameter based authentication. So let's have a look on them first. So here we'll go to the MoveSend application named as MoveSend Clone. Now to begin with guys, after naming your application, the first step what we have to do is to enter some basic details of the application, like the name of the application, the description of the application, that what does this application do. Then you have to upload the logo, and the logo size should be 64 x 64 inch pixel. Then we have to select the auth type. So here you can see that in Pabbly Connect, it supports various types of auths. So out of which in this video, we are going to select parameters as an auth type. So we have referred to the API doc of MoveSend and we found that it uses parameter based authentication. So that's why we have selected parameter. After selecting our auth type as parameter, here it is asking us set body, query or path parameter. So we have to create a parameter guys over here using which we will be getting or we will be collecting the API key or API ID from the user who is using your application in the front end. So right now, as you can see here, I have created a parameter named as API key. So by clicking on this plus button, you can add multiple parameters if required in your application. And after creating these parameters, to configure them, just click on this settings button. And here in the set response parameter details, you can configure it. So what we have done, we have added a label name and a label description. So guys, the label name will be the field, will be the text which will be shown to the user in the front end. So API key, we have given this name. So API key will be the name which will be shown to the user in the connection window. And this is the description of this field. After entering this, just click on save. So in this way, you can create a parameter or field using which you can collect the API key or API token from the users in the front end. After that, here we have a field of help text. So in this help text section, you can actually enter the complete description, the complete instruction that how a user can get the API key or API token of your application. Like you can see here, we have entered the complete description that how a user can get the API key of their MoveSend account. So they just have to follow this instructions over here to get the API key. And after entering these basic details, just click on save. And after that, you can see we have completed the step 1. We have successfully entered some basic details of the application which we wanted to integrate. After this, let's move to step 2 and start creating some triggers. So from the left side, we will move to triggers section. And now after reaching to this triggers section, just click on this create trigger button, give your trigger event a name and click on save. So right now you can see that on the left side, here is a list of all the triggers which we have created for MoveSend. And out of all of this, we are going to have a look on trigger named as new subscriber. So here the process is basically the same. The first thing what we have to do is to enter some basic details of this trigger, like the name of the trigger event, the description of the trigger event, that what does this trigger event do, what kind of data this trigger event captures. Then if you have a dedicated video tutorial on how this trigger event actually works inside Pabbly Connect, you can add the URL or the link of that tutorial over here. Then we have to select the trigger type, and it is quite important. So in the drop down below, we will see Pabbly Connect offers 3 different types of triggers. First one is webhook setup by instruction. Second one is webhook setup by API request. And the third one is polling to check new data. So if your application, if you allow your users to manually or directly enter the webhook URL or paste the webhook URL into your application, you can select webhook setup by instruction as a trigger type. If you support webhooks but you don't allow your users to directly enter the webhook URL and your application requires a API request to set up a webhook, then you can select webhook setup by API request. And if your application does not support webhook, you can use or you can select polling to check new data as a trigger type. In this case, guys, at a regular interval, Pabbly Connect will pull some data, pull the trigger data from your application and get it to the Pabbly Connect workflow. So here, MoveSend do support webhook, adding webhook manually by the user. So here we have selected trigger type as webhook setup by instruction. Then we have to select trigger response type. So by default, we select simple response because we want to get the data from our application and show that data in simple response. Then here we have a field of trigger setup instructions. So because we have selected trigger type as webhook setup by instruction, that what are the instructions that I need to follow or how a user can paste the webhook URL in your application. For example, in MoveSend, you have to enter those complete instructions over here. So here we have entered the complete instruction that how a user can enter webhook URL in their MoveSend account. Then you also have an optional field of adding some kind of important help text. So if there is something important notification or help text you want to update or send or show to your users, you can enter that text over here. And after that, just click on save. So in this way, you have successfully created a trigger in Pabbly Connect. Now you can follow the same process according to your application and start creating multiple triggers as well. And after creating this trigger, guys, let's have a look on this trigger in the front end first. So what we are going to do, we are going to go to the front end dashboard of Pabbly Connect, and after that, let's create a workflow. So let's create a workflow and give this workflow a name as, for example, demo. Now after that, after creating a workflow, in trigger window in choose app, we will search for MoveSend clone. So the application on which we are working right now, on which we are having a look is named as MoveSend clone. So let's have a look on this application, select this application MoveSend clone. And in trigger event from the drop down, let's select this trigger event of new subscriber. And yes guys, as we select this trigger event, Pabbly Connect gave us a webhook URL. And after webhook URL, we can see some instructions over here. So by copying this webhook URL and following these instructions, the user can enter this webhook URL into their MoveSend account. And after that, MoveSend will be sending some data for that particular event to Pabbly Connect. So in this way, you can set up webhook setup by instruction based trigger inside Pabbly Connect. After creating some triggers and completing this step 2, let's move to step 3 and start building some actions. For that, from the left side, we will go to this action section. And after that, just click on this create new action button, give your action event a name and click on save. So guys, the first process, the basic process is still the same. First, we have to enter some basic details of the action event which we are building. So we just have to give our action event a name, a description that what does it do. Then here also you have an option to add a video tutorial of this action event and also some important text and click on save. So we are done with the basic details. Then when you will scroll down, here you can see that I have added a step named as Inbuilt Action Details. So what is this Inbuilt Action and how it works? We will have a look on this a couple of minutes later, but first we will scroll down and come to this Action Event API configuration. So here guys, we are going to actually configure the complete API call which we are going to make in this action event. So first thing which we have to select is the HTTP method. So from the drop down below, we can see all the 5 methods. You have to select your HTTP method according to your endpoint and the API doc. Then guys, this action event on which we are having a look right now is named as add new subscriber. So using this action event, we are adding some new subscriber in our MoveSend account. So for that, to make this action event work, we need to make a API call. And that's why we have entered the API endpoint URL for this particular action event. And in this endpoint URL, guys, we have to enter the mailing list ID, that in which mailing list in our MoveSend account we want to add this new subscriber in. And also guys, because MoveSend requires parameter based authentication, we will be also passing a parameter of API key which is required for the authentication in MoveSend. So guys, here we have to enter the API endpoint which is required to make this API call, make this action event work. Then you have to select the request body type. So in the drop down below, you can see various body types over here. Select the body type of your choice and then wrap an array. So do we want to wrap this API call in array? No, we don't want to. That's why we have selected no. Then you have an option of HTTP headers. So if your application requires some kind of HTTP headers to be received for each and every call, you can select it and add those HTTP headers over here. And by clicking on this settings icon, you can configure these headers as well. but move send does not require it, so we have unselected it. Then after that, here we have an option of set body, query and path parameter. So in this field, we have created some fields, and using these fields, we are getting some data in the front end from the users. So the first thing which we have created, the first field, first parameter which we have created is mailing list ID, because this API endpoint requires the mailing list ID, that in which mailing list in our MoveSend account we want to add this subscriber. So right now here we have created a parameter. By clicking on this add new parameter button, you can also add multiple parameters according to your choice. And after creating these guys, what we have to do, we have to actually click on this settings button and configure this parameter. Now guys, here we have to select the mailing list in this field. The user will be selecting the mailing list from their account. But how we are going to know, how we are going to get the list, the complete data of all the mailing list of the user who is using our application in the front end. Now to get this data in the backend guys and show it in the front end, what we have done, we have created an inbuilt action. As you can see here, before this API configuration, we have added a step of inbuilt action. And using this inbuilt action of fetch mailing list, we actually get a complete data of all the mailing list from the user's MoveSend account. So to build an inbuilt action, what you have to do, you just have to go to this inbuilt action section. And then here just click on this create inbuilt action button and start building your inbuilt action. So right now you can see I have created 4 inbuilt action. First one is fetch mailing list, and this is the inbuilt action which we are using. So let's have a look on this first. The first thing what you have to select is the inbuilt action type. So in the drop down, you can see 3 different types. Is it a drop down in custom field action? Is it a multi-step action? Or is it a app auth validator? So this is a drop down and custom field action. So we have selected it. Then you have to give this inbuilt action a name and a description. Then you have to enter the API configuration in this inbuilt action. So guys, what this inbuilt action is going to do, you have to get or configure that API configuration, set up this API configuration over here. Select your HTTP method and select the endpoint URL. So in this inbuilt action, we want to get a complete data of all the mailing list of our MoveSend account. So we have referred to the API doc of MoveSend and we found that this is an endpoint using which we can get a complete data of a mailing list from MoveSend. So we have entered this endpoint URL. And guys, because MoveSend uses parameter based authentication, so in the drop down below, we have selected no auth and we have passed the API key of our MoveSend account in the parameters. So here we have the option of set body, query paths and parameters. So here we have created a parameter of API key and we have passed the parameter with this endpoint URL. After that, guys, you can see there are multiple fields, multiple parameters, other parameters as well, which we have created. So all these parameters were required to get this data, to get the complete data of mailing list from MoveSend. For this endpoint URL to be called or used, all this data were required. So we have created these fields over here. After creating these fields, after configuring all the details of this API endpoint URL, what you have to do, you have to click on save and send test request. So after clicking on send test request, you will get a response of mailing list from MoveSend. So guys, while integrating an application inside Pabbly Connect, what you have to do, you have to actually connect your account in Pabbly Connect. Like by building this inbuilt action, you have to actually enter the API key of your MoveSend account and make the connection. And after making this connection, you have to get this data of all the mailing list from MoveSend in Pabbly Connect. It is very important guys, because while building other triggers and action using this inbuilt action, we are going to use this data, use this response to create or build those actions over there as well. And guys, don't worry, in runtime and while actually using this application in the front end in Pabbly Connect, this data, the API key and all the authentication and connection details will be replaced in the runtime by the details of the user who is entering it. Which means if you have entered the API key of your MoveSend account and then received this response while integrating this application, in runtime, the API key will be replaced by the API key entered by the user in the front end. So in this way, you can create the inbuilt action, and here we have received the response of the mailing list from MoveSend over here. Now we are going to add this inbuilt action which we have created in the action event which we are building. Let's get back to actions over here. And after that, we will scroll down, and here by clicking on this add action step button, we have added this inbuilt action of fetching all the mailing list. So whenever a user will select this action event named as add new subscriber, automatically in the backend, guys, what Pabbly Connect will do, Pabbly Connect will get complete data of all the mailing list. And then we will show that complete data of their mailing list from MooSend account in front end as a drop down to the user. For that, we have created these fields, like what all data you want to get or what all inputs you want to get from the user in the front end. You have to create those data or those fields over here in this path parameter section. So here we have created a parameter of mailing list ID. So from this, a user can select from the drop down that in which mailing list they want to add the subscriber. So after creating this parameter, we also have to configure this parameter. And to do so, just click on this settings button. And here we have reached to configure field details option. Now guys, the first thing it asks us is the label name. So whatever label name to this field, this parameter you will give, the same name will be reflected in the front end. Then it is asking us, is it a dynamic dropdown? Is this field a dynamic dropdown or a static dropdown? So the field which we are creating is a dynamic dropdown. And after that, by selecting dynamic dropdown, here it has two options, option label and option value. So in the dropdown below, we can see that all the responses of our inbuilt action which we have added, like we have added the inbuilt action of fetch mailing list, and all the responses which we have received from the fetch mailing list responses, we can see all of those responses over here. All of those responses from the inbuilt action which we have created over here. From this responses, guys, what is the response? What is the data which you want to show to the user in the front end? You have to select that data in option label. Like I want to show the name of the mailing list in the front end. So I have selected the response of name, mailing list name. And in option value, guys, you can see the same responses of inbuilt action. But what data we need to send while making the API call, we have to select that data, that response in option value. So to make this API call, guys, to via this endpoint URL, we have to send the mailing list ID. So here we have selected the response of mailing list ID. Then it is asking us field type. So in the dropdown below, we have two active field types. First one is select and second one is multi-select. So this is a select field, guys. A user can only select one mailing list at a time. So that's why we have selected select over here as a field type. Then is this field required? If yes, select this box. And then you can also add some kind of help text for this field over here as well. Like you can enter the complete help text that how a user is supposed to respond to this field. Then you can see all other fields as well. So if you require, you can select or enter details according to your choice. And after entering all of these details, just click on save. So in this way, we have configured a field. Now we have another field of API key. So here we have configured the field of API key as well. And we are getting the API key in the authentication or connection window. So that's why we have entered or created a field of API key while making the connection, while entering some basic details of the application. Then you can see name and email. So to create or add a subscriber in MooSend, we have to enter the name and email address of the person as well. So we have created parameters for that too. Let's see how we have configured it. So it is going to be a string. So that's why we have selected field type as string, and the label name is name of the subscriber. So this will be the name for the field which we have created. We have entered the help text and click on save. So in this way, guys, you can add multiple parameters according to your choice, according to your API endpoint, and then configure them as well. After entering and configuring all of these details, the last option we have is request body or raw JSON. So if your application, if your API endpoint requires to send some kind of raw JSON data as a body, you can select it and enter the raw JSON body over here as well. If not, just unselect it and ignore it for now. And click on save. And after that, we will see that we have successfully created an action event in Pabbly Connect as well. So in this way, using this action event, a user can add subscriber to their MooSend account. Now guys, after building this action event, let's have a look on this action event in the front end. That how does this action event look? So we will go to a Pabbly Connect workflow which we have created, scroll down and come to action. And here in a choose app, we will search for this app, MooSend Clone. So we are having a look on this MooSend Clone app. Let's select it. In action event, select add new subscriber and then click on connect. Now here guys, it is asking us to connect our MooSend account and it is asking the API key to make the connection. So let me enter the API key of my MooSend account. And after entering the API key, just click on save. So as I told you guys that the API key which we are making while building the actions and inbuilt actions, it will be replaced in runtime by the API key or the credentials entered by the user in the front end. So whatever credentials or API key the user will be entering in the front end, it will be replaced by the same API key. Then here you can see that we have an option of mailing list. So from this option, the user can select that which mailing list in their MoveSend account they want to add this new subscriber. So right now in my MoveSend account, I have only one mailing list and this is it. Then we have created two custom fields, guys, two parameters. First one was of the name of the subscriber and second one was of email address of the subscriber. So we can see both of these fields over here, the same fields or same parameters which we have created while configuring this API endpoint. Now guys, after creating this action event, let's test this action event once. Let's enter the details of a dummy subscriber over here. For example, a dummy name. And then let's enter a dummy email address as well. And after entering these details, let's click on Save and Send Test Request. And after clicking on Save and Send Test Request, here we have received some response. And this response seems to be a positive response to us. This response shows that there's users whose details we have entered, whose name and email we have entered over here is now added as a subscriber in our MoveSend account. So let's check it. We'll go to a MoveSend account. We'll go to the email list section. This was our email list which we have selected. And let's see all the members. And yes guys, here you can see that just now the same user has been added as a new subscriber in our MoveSend account. This means the action event which we have created over here is working perfectly fine. So guys, in this way, you can keep on adding multiple triggers and action and keep on integrating your applications inside Pabbly Connect. Now, if you're directly from the app integration team, you can actually integrate your application inside Pabbly Connect and submit it for approval. And once your application gets approved by the Pabbly Connect team, it will be publicly accessible on the Pabbly Connect platform for other users to use as well. And if you are not from the app integration team, but somehow you have integrated an app inside Pabbly Connect, you can privately share those applications with other users as well by inviting them. Now to invite those users to your application, just go to this sharing section and invite them to use your application with you as well. So guys, I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any kind of doubts or queries, you can write us in the comment box below. So this is it for today's video guys. Thank you. Have a great day.